In a world where digital technologies are rapidly changing our daily lives, art does not stand aside from this revolution. Virtual exhibitions are the new reality of the 21st century art world. These digital canvases allow us to travel through the galleries of the Louvre in the morning and explore the collections of the Hermitage in the evening without leaving our own living room. The history of virtual exhibitions began with simple, digitized catalogs in the 90s, when museums took their first timid steps into the internet space. Back then, it seemed merely an addition to the real experience. Today, however, we are witnessing the flourishing of full-fledged virtual galleries with high-resolution panoramic tours, interactive elements, and even full immersion through virtual reality technologies. The pandemic of the 20th year catalyzed this process, transforming digital exhibitions from an experimental format into an urgent necessity. Now, it is not just an alternative, but an independent artistic space with its own laws and aesthetics. Over the last decade, virtual exhibition technologies have evolved from primitive photo galleries to sophisticated multi-sensory systems. The modern toolkit of digital expositions is striking in its diversity. 360-degree panoramic tours allow the viewer to independently choose their route and vantage point, creating a sense of real presence in the exhibition space. Gigapixel imaging technology makes it possible to examine the smallest details of paintings, Van Gogh's brushstrokes or cracks on ancient frescoes, which are inaccessible during a regular museum visit. VR installations transport us inside artistic worlds, allowing us to literally step into a Monet landscape or find ourselves among the characters in Bosch's paintings. Interactive elements transform a passive viewer into an active participant. One can move objects, change lighting, and experiment with composition. Augmented reality overlays digital layers onto real artworks, revealing their hidden stories, from preliminary sketches to X-rays of canvases. These technological solutions don't just replicate real experiences, but create fundamentally new ways of interacting with art. Curators have gained unprecedented freedom. Now it's possible to combine works from different museums around the world in one space, recreate lost artifacts, and visualize abstract concepts. Can a digital copy of a painting evoke the same emotions as the original? This question becomes central when studying the affective dimension of virtual exhibitions. Research shows that a viewer's emotional response when interacting with digital art has its own unique nature. When we stand before a physical Rothko canvas, a special feeling overcomes us, a mix of awe before the materiality of the work, its history, its aura. In the virtual space, this aura transforms but does not completely disappear. Instead, a new type of emotional resonance emerges, linked to immersiveness and interactivity. Digital technologies allow for the amplification of certain aspects of perception, musical accompaniment, animation of painting elements. The ability to zoom in on the smallest details create a multi-layered emotional experience. A virtual exhibition of Van Gogh's works, where his sunflowers begin to sway slowly in an invisible breeze, and the starry sky over the Rhone shimmers and twinkles, is capable of inducing deep emotional immersion. Interestingly, the digital space sometimes allows for a more personal, intimate connection with the artwork. Alone with the screen, without the distractions of a museum crowd, the viewer can focus on their own experiences. However, there is also a downside: the phenomenon of emotional distancing. The physical barrier of the screen can create a sense of alienation, especially when it comes to works whose texture, volume, and materiality play a key role in perception. Rodin's sculptures, or the textured canvases of the Impressionists, lose some of their emotional power when translated into digital format. Digital technologies are not just changing the ways art is displayed, they are transforming the very process of its perception and comprehension. Our brain processes information differently in a virtual environment, engaging new cognitive mechanisms. If a traditional museum offers a linear route, a virtual exhibition allows for the creation of multi-dimensional cognitive trajectories. The viewer gains the ability to construct narratives independently, connecting works according to their own logic, outside chronological or stylistic frameworks. This develops associative thinking and the ability for unconventional interpretations. Studies show that such freedom of navigation activates analytical abilities and stimulates creative perception. The digital environment also changes the nature of our attention. In a physical museum, it often dissipates due to numerous external factors: other visitors, limited time, physical discomfort. Virtual space allows for focusing on details inaccessible during normal viewing. When we can zoom in on a fragment of a painting to the level of individual brushstrokes or examine a sculpture from any angle, new mechanisms of visual analysis are engaged. Interactive elements create the effect of active cognition. We don't just look, but interact with the work, which enhances memorization and understanding. The informational layers of virtual exhibitions, contextual references, expert comments, historical documents, form a multi-level system of knowledge, available on demand. This allows the viewer to independently regulate the depth of immersion in the material, moving from a superficial acquaintance to detailed study. Such personalization of the cognitive process aligns with modern ideas about cognitive effectiveness and adaptive learning. Virtual exhibitions create a special form of collective understanding of art through commenting functions, joint viewing, and real-time discussion. This gives rise to new models of social knowledge construction, where the interpretation of a work becomes the result of a dialogue among multiple viewers. Art has always been the privilege of a select few. Those who could afford to travel to museums around the world, who had enough free time and resources to visit exhibitions. Virtual exhibitions break down these barriers, making world cultural heritage accessible to everyone with an internet connection. The Google Arts and Culture project has made this a reality. Over 2,000 museums from 80 countries have opened their digital doors to visitors from the most remote corners of the planet. A resident of a Siberian village can now explore the Prado collection, and a child from an African school can examine exhibits at the British Museum. Economic barriers are also being erased. While a ticket to a major museum can cost tens of dollars, virtual admission is often free or requires a minimal fee. Virtual exhibitions become especially significant for people with disabilities. Innovative projects such as Touch the Prado allow blind people to experience art through tactile reproductions and audio descriptions. Special video guides in sign language are created for people with hearing impairments. Elderly people and those with limited mobility gain the opportunity for cultural participation without leaving their homes. The Museum in a Suitcase project delivers virtual exhibitions to remote rural schools where children have never been to a real museum. Interactive programs adapt content for different age groups, educational levels, and cultural contexts. Democratization is also happening at the content level. Digital platforms give a voice to artists from regions traditionally underrepresented in world art. Virtual galleries of African, Asian, and Latin American art break down the Eurocentric canon, creating a truly global picture of cultural diversity. The digital age is fundamentally changing not only the ways art is displayed, but also the very principles of curatorial work. Virtual space is becoming a new creative laboratory for museum specialists, freeing them from the physical limitations of traditional galleries. A curator in the digital environment gains almost limitless freedom to experiment with space, light, sound, and context. It becomes possible to create exhibitions impossible in reality, to bring together works stored in different parts of the world, to recreate lost artifacts, to reconstruct historical exhibitions of the past. The famous 1920 Dadaist exhibition in Berlin, known only from a few photographs, was fully recreated in virtual space, allowing contemporary viewers to immerse themselves in the revolutionary atmosphere of avant-garde art of the early 20th century. Digital tools allow curators to build multi-layered narratives, where the visitor can independently choose the depth of immersion in the material. The same virtual tour can offer both a basic route for beginners and in-depth thematic trajectories for connoisseurs. Immersive technologies make it possible to create truly captivating stories, where the viewer becomes an active participant in the narrative. A virtual exhibition dedicated to the work of Frida Kahlo allows one to literally enter her famous blue house, hear the artist's voice, read pages from her diary, and trace how personal experiences transformed into visual images on canvases. This format radically changes the perception of art, creating an emotional connection between the viewer and the artist through context and history. In the digital age, a new aesthetic is born. The aesthetic of virtual space with its unique laws and expressive means. The traditional perception of art, based on the physical presence of the viewer before a material object, gives way to other forms of artistic experience. Virtual exhibitions form their own canons of beauty and significance, where interactivity, dynamism, and multisensory engagement become key evaluation criteria. The digital environment frees the artwork from material constraints. In virtual space, a painting can transform into a three-dimensional object, a sculpture can begin to move, and an architectural structure can transform before the viewer's eyes. This gives rise to a special aesthetic of metamorphoses, where the boundaries between genres and types of art become permeable. Virtual exhibitions create a new type of visual language based on hypertextuality. Each element of an exhibition can contain multiple layers of meaning, unfolding through interaction. Aesthetic value is determined not only by visual qualities, but also by the depth of these layers and the richness of associative links. Digital art changes the very foundations of the perception of beauty. If classical aesthetics valued completeness and perfection of form, virtual aesthetics prioritizes openness and processuality. An artwork is never definitively finished. It exists in a constant state of becoming, changing with each new interaction. Virtual exhibitions radically transform the role of the viewer, turning them from a passive observer into an active participant in the artistic process. This metamorphosis marks a fundamental shift in the culture of art perception that has developed over the past centuries. If traditional museum experience is based on contemplation, a silent dialogue between the viewer and the work through a visual channel, then interactive exhibitions create a multi-dimensional space of interaction, where the boundaries between the author, the work, and the audience become permeable. Touching the screen can animate a static canvas, filling it with movement, sound, and new layers of meaning. In some virtual galleries, visitors can change lighting, move objects, experiment with composition, becoming co-creators of the work. Random International's famous Rain Room installation, transferred to the digital space, allows each viewer to create unique configurations of water flows, forming a personal artistic experience. Such active involvement changes the very psychology of perception, from detached aesthetic judgment to a bodily, empathetic experience. Studies show that interactive engagement with art activates different neural connections than simple contemplation. leading to deeper emotional immersion and better retention. Virtual space also transforms the social dimension of artistic experience. Functions of co-viewing, commenting, and collective creativity create new forms of cultural dialogue unavailable in a traditional museum. Visitors from different parts of the world can simultaneously explore an exhibition, share impressions, and create their own interpretations of what they see. Art becomes not just an object of contemplation, but a catalyst for communication, a platform for forming communities of like-minded individuals. Virtual exhibitions are becoming a powerful educational tool, opening up unprecedented opportunities for pedagogical practice. Digital expositions transform the learning process into an exciting journey where everyone can explore masterpieces of world art at their own pace and with an individual approach. Teachers around the world are integrating virtual galleries into their programs, creating multi-dimensional educational spaces unavailable in a traditional classroom. Students from a small town can now take a virtual tour of the Tretyakov Gallery, studying Shishkin's technique in detail or delving into Vrubel's mystical worlds. Virtual exhibitions are particularly valuable for developing visual literacy, a skill becoming critically important in an era of information overload. Interactive elements allow students to literally dissect a work into its components, to trace compositional lines, identify color accents, and understand the principles of perspective. The Artifact Project offers school children the opportunity to create their own mini-exhibitions, acting as curators and developing critical thinking skills through the selection, analysis, and presentation of artistic material. In universities, virtual expositions become a platform for interdisciplinary research, combining art history with history, philosophy, sociology, and even exact sciences. Students can analyze mathematical proportions in Renaissance architecture, or investigate the physical properties of light in Impressionist painting. Informal education is also being transformed under the influence of digital exhibitions. Online museum programs for the elderly help maintain cognitive functions and develop new neural connections through aesthetic perception and creative interaction with art. The virtualization of art sparks heated debates in the professional community. Critics of this phenomenon put forward weighty arguments that make one ponder the profound consequences of the digital transformation of the artistic experience. At the heart of the controversy is the question of authenticity. Can a pixelated version of Rembrandt's, quote, be considered an authentic work of art? The philosopher Walter Benjamin, back in the 1930s, wrote about the, quote, of the original work, the unique feeling of its uniqueness, its rootedness in time and space. Digital reproduction, critics argue, inevitably destroys this aura, turning art into a simulacrum devoid of sacred dimension. When a Van Gogh painting is displayed on a screen, we lose the opportunity to feel the texture of the canvas, the volume of the paint layer, to sense the material presence of the master's creation. A peculiar dematerialization of art occurs, depriving it of a crucial dimension: physicality. Opponents of virtualization point to the danger of sensory impoverishment of the artistic experience. A real museum visit engages all senses. We see works, hear the acoustics of the halls, smell old frames and canvases, perceive the temperature of the space. The virtual experience is reduced predominantly to the visual channel, creating a flat, one-dimensional perception. Critics are also concerned about the problem of contextuality. A work of art exists within a complex network of cultural, historical, and social connections. The architecture of the museum, the arrangement of the halls, the proximity to other exhibits, all this forms a unique context of perception, which is lost when transferred to a digital environment. Virtual exhibitions, for all their technological sophistication, create an illusion of accessibility, but substitute a genuine artistic experience with its simplified version. This gives rise to a culture of superficial browsing of content instead of deep, thoughtful contemplation. The future of art lies not in the confrontation of the real and the virtual, but in their harmonious coexistence. Recent years have shown that hybrid exhibition models, combining the advantages of both worlds, are becoming the most successful. The Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York has created an immersive space where physical exhibits are complemented by digital projections that reveal their history and context. A visitor can touch an ancient amphora and simultaneously see how it was used in ancient Greece, thanks to projection technologies. The Tate Gallery in London employs audiovisual editions that allow visitors to literally hear the sounds from Impressionist paintings, the sound of sea waves in Monet's canvases, or the hubbub of Parisian streets in Renoir's. These elements do not compete with the originals, but enrich their perception. The Japanese digital art museum Team Lab Borderless has gone even further. Here, physical and virtual spaces are fully integrated. Visitors move among fields of flowers that react to their movements, creating a unique interactive experience on the border of reality and the digital world. An important trend is the use of augmented reality mobile applications directly in traditional museums. By pointing a smartphone camera at a painting, a visitor can see its hidden layers, preliminary sketches, or a three-dimensional reconstruction of the depicted scene. NFC tag technology allows for personalized content, adapted to the interests of a specific viewer. Hybrid models also solve the problem of accessibility. A person with disabilities can virtually explore halls inaccessible for physical visits, and then focus on a personal acquaintance with selected exhibits. The future of artistic perception is not in choosing between real and virtual experiences, but in their mutual enrichment and the creation of multidimensional spaces where art is revealed in all its fullness. We stand on the threshold of a new era in art perception. Technologies that seem revolutionary today will, tomorrow, become commonplace tools for artistic interaction. Virtual exhibitions of the future will overcome the last barriers between the viewer and the work, creating an experience indistinguishable from reality and simultaneously surpassing its capabilities. Neurointerfaces, perhaps the most captivating direction of development. Imagine, you don't just look at a Kandinsky painting, but literally feel the emotions the artist experienced when creating it. Technologies for reading and transmitting neural impulses will allow for the creation of truly empathetic art, where the boundaries between creator and viewer dissolve into a single emotional field. Artificial intelligence will transform curatorial practices, analyzing the individual preferences of each visitor and forming personalized exhibition routes. Smart algorithms will not only select works that resonate with your aesthetic experience, but also adapt the way they are presented: lighting, sound accompaniment, contextual information. Tactile holograms and aromatic simulators will add a sensory dimension to virtual exhibitions. You will be able to feel the texture of Michelangelo's marble sculpture or inhale the salty air of Aiwazowski's seascapes. This multi-sensory experience will create a new depth of immersion, unattainable through traditional perception. The social dimension of virtual exhibitions will also undergo radical changes. Telepresence technologies will allow people from different corners of the globe to meet in a unified exhibition space, exchange impressions, and participate in collaborative creative experiments. Art will become a catalyst for the formation of global communities united by aesthetic experiences. However, the future of virtual exhibitions is not without challenges. The development of new ethical and aesthetic criteria for evaluating digital art will be required. How to maintain a balance between technological innovations and the authenticity of the artistic experience. How to prevent art from becoming another product of mass consumption? These questions will require deep reflection and public dialogue.